If you are unfamiliar with the workshop model, it might look a little bit weird or intimidating or confusing when you first look at it. But the workshop model is really how I transformed my teaching when I was in the classroom, and I fell in love with this method of thinking. It caused me to kind of stretch the way that I teach and actually be able to confer with students and have more time to meet the individualized needs of the kiddos that were sitting in my classroom. So, I want to draw your attention on my screen to the workshop model circle that I have here. If your brain does not work in a circle, hang tight because I have a different way to do the workshop model that's not a circle. So don't lose me because it's a circle. But the basic gist of the workshop model is that you're going to start off with a mini lesson. And technically, you can start at any part. Okay. You don't have to always start with the mini lesson, but that's how my brain always works. You can modify this. But let's say that you do start off with a mini lesson. Science shows that students and kids have an attention span anywhere between 2 to 10 minutes long. Anything past that, as far as actually taking in content, it's really difficult for them to pay attention to. So start off with just a little bit of information. What are the key facts, the key ideas, whatever it is that you want your kids to take away? Use that and give that teaching moment. Then let the students take the majority of the class to show what they know or to practice or to learn on their own. And while the kids are working during that practice time, that's going to be the time for you to go and take a moment to say, which kids do I need to check in on? Which ones are struggling? Which ones need help with me one on one or in a small group? And it lets you have that moment to confer with them. But they'll only just focus on them. It's a prime opportunity for you to give extension activities to those students who seem to be bored with the content or need that extra push. So it just helps you get the chance to talk with your kids and provide that immediate one on one feedback that we know is vital for students to get in order to be successful with what they're learning. Also, during this practice time, you can do group work, you can do anything at all, but we can make sure that we are providing and building in those opportunities for what we call a catch and release, to where you could have something planned like 20 minutes into or 10 minutes into the 20-minute work time. You could say your class, or however it is that you get your class attention, and you can do that catch moment to where you're like, okay, we're halfway done. I want to draw your attention to the rubric to make sure that we are following along, or whatever it is. And you can predetermine what those are going to be. But I always found that it was so much more powerful that as I was walking around the classroom and talking to my kids, if I seen a lot of misconceptions, that I would catch the students and say, okay, I'm noticing that you all are thinking this, and then we could use that as a teaching moment. And then they can continue their practice. At the end, and some might argue that this is one of the most important and valuable sections of the workshop model, you're going to have that share and reflect time. I was guilty my first year of teaching. I taught math during that time. And I would put up a math problem on the end of the board and just take up the little exit slips. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I was guilty of not having the students discuss, not letting them do a pair share and reflect with one another. I didn't know that those things were valuable back then, but I do now. So a pair share is when you have a student and they have another student that they could turn around and talk to, maybe a shoulder partner or whatever, and they're going to talk about what they learned that day, give each of them a chance to talk. But it's so important for them to have a chance to reflect back on here's what they thought at the beginning, and then reflect on how their thinking has changed along this class. Now, some of the common misconceptions of the workshop model, is that it's only for reading and writing. And it's true that when this was developed, that it was called the reading workshop model or the writing workshop model. However, this work schedule can work for any content. It can, because I have seen it, and it works for any grade level because it takes that focus away from the teacher, because we talk a lot, we know that, but it takes that focus and the work off of us, and it puts that onto the students. I'll never forget my first year in Franklin County schools. I was in the new teacher cadre. Some of you watching this video might be in that this year. And back then, Dr. Masters would come around and do an observation of the new teachers within the district, and he would confer with us at the end. And my first time, I had done a lesson that I thought was 5-star. Now, I wasn't a new teacher, but I was still new to the district. And he said to me, he said, Stella, I think you're working 10 times harder than the students are. And I was like, no. And he was like, you are. You really are. And he was right. I was. And I started thinking about how to change the way that I delivered my content. And if I'd known about the workshop model back then, I would have seen how different it could be whenever the students take power and take control of their own learning. It really does give them huge opportunity for that growth. So I used that, and at that time I was teaching science, and I started using the workshop model within my science classroom. It is not just for reading and writing. This can be impactful. It can have such a dramatic effect, a strong, positive, dramatic effect on our kids and how they learn. It will not work beyond elementary. I used it in middle school, and I've seen it used in high school, and I can tell you it will work. It will. And then it won't work with my schedule. You can change these times for however you want. And these times don't need to be set in stone for every day. There might be some days where your mini lesson is going to go 15 minutes because you have a lot of instructions. You might be doing a science lab and you have to model that. You might be doing a read aloud and you have to model that. It is okay to steer off of how much time you allot each day for each section. Now, I know that this was a very quick and very short overview of the workshop model, but I just really want you to know that this can increase the independency of the students sitting within your classroom so much if you structure your class in a way to make this be successful. There is an additional workshop model professional learning opportunity on our district webpage that focuses solely on the workshop model, and is delivered by Ms. Paula Goss. If you are interested in learning more about how to use the workshop model, we're going to be talking about that throughout this lesson, but I would highly recommend her session as well.